Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, CEO and founder of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and award-winning author. Welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Jessica Morrison, owner of Seaside Digital Design and Marketing, LLC. Jessica is an SEO expert for local businesses. She helps business owners get greater online visibility and higher search engine rankings within their local market. Jessica has over 20 years of experience working with multimillion-dollar companies in marketing, business development, sales, and influencer marketing with companies including Pfizer, Walmart, prAna, Stonyfield, and BJ's Wholesale. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Miss Jessica Morrison. Hey, Jessica, how are you?
How are you? I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited. You know, we were just talking shortly before we came on, and so we were actually getting into some good conversations. We're going to, eventually catch up with that while we're on the show this evening. But I'm just really excited to have you on and to learn more about SEO. We hear a lot about SEO, but, the reality is I don't think people really do understand the real true purpose behind it and how important it is to have for a business. So we're going to be diving in that in a second. But before we do, why don't you please tell the listeners and the audience a little bit more about who Jessica Morrison really is.
All right. Well, I live on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, right down the street from the beach. And it's actually kind of funny. I moved into the house I grew up in about 7 years ago. I moved back home. I lived on the West Coast for a while, but I could not stay away from the ocean and came back and I'm raising my 3 boys. I was with my husband, my 3 boys, and our super mega mutt, Lucy. And I love helping local businesses. That's really my jam. Is small local businesses are really my people. So it's something I'm super passionate about.
Well, love it. Well, first of all, I'm jealous because you live on the beach. So, that's one thing I'm jealous about. Okay. But the other thing I'm jealous about is that, you are getting to pick and choose everything that you want to do. And I do love how you really focus on being and wanting to work with small businesses. I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when I think about after reading your bio, we talk a little bit about Pfizer and Walmart and prAna, and I don't know if people really would consider those small businesses. So we're going to dive into that and why those other businesses are just as important and how we look at, what's the difference between a small and a large business. So Jessica, before we get into some of these other great nuggets and golden questions, tell us how you got started into what inspired you to get into the business and why was it so important for you to do what you're doing?
Okay. Well, I have what I jokingly refer to as a less than linear career path. That's how I was described at a Women in Business conference from my college, which I thought was really funny. I went to a liberal arts college and had a lot of different interests. Thought when I graduated, I was actually a Spanish language literature major, that I wanted to go to law school, but a quick stint spending a year in a corporate law firm as a paralegal in New York City scratched that off. And then I decided to actually, spur of the moment, move out to San Diego, California with no job, no place to live, but 8 other people. And that was actually probably one of the biggest risks I took. I'm kind of sort of a risk-averse person, so I think it's sort of funny in retrospect that I decided to do that. But I ended up falling into the biofarm sector out in San Diego, working in business development. And then later, when I decided to move back to the East Coast, I went to work for Pfizer in sales and did that for a while until I started my family and transitioned into something different. I wanted some more flexibility in my career and the ability to be home when I needed it. So I sort of got into blogging when it took off, kind of around maybe 2009 or 2010, and really worked as a blogger, social media influencer with a lot of really large corporations, and then got into building WordPress web designs, which then led me to specialize in SEO, since I found that a lot of my local clients or smaller businesses really were sort of at a loss when it came to SEO, because they were pitched a lot of times by these large agencies that sort of wanted to take a one-size-fits-all approach that didn't really fly with small business. And because I grew up in a smaller community with a really bustling main street that's kind of undergone this huge revitalization, my heart is always with those main street businesses, the brick and mortar places that really are the backbone of our economy. So I feel like I've come a little bit full circle in such a great way.
Yeah, you did, because I was just listening to that circle of you started here working here at these higher end visibility type organizations, and then from there you started to blog, and then from blogging here you are more interested into the SEO side and doing your own business in a different format. And I think that's amazing that you actually were able to get to that full circle, because not a lot of times people don't go to that full circle. They just kind of dive in to do something else. But then also you came out of your own comfort zone and realized that, you know what, I'm going to start living my life the way I want by you just jumping out and moving to California. Like you said, it's something that you weren't prone to do. But every little step from there, it sounds like you started to do your own thing that was most comfortable for you and giving you the flexibility that you need. But then also you realize what the true love of understanding what your business is about. And you're right, when it comes to SEO, and even for me as a small business, I struggle with that, because I get hundreds and hundreds of people who will send me emails or text messages saying, hey, let me be your SEO expert. I'm like, okay, well, what the hell is that? What are you trying to sell me today, right? And it's not that you don't understand, but when it's sent to you in a way of that, it's just, hey, I'm selling you something. I refuse to dive into that, because they're not really giving you a full, true understanding. It's just, hey, this is where I can put you at in a ranking, and you're just a number to them versus really someone explaining what SEO means. So talk a little bit about, what does search engine mean? What does the rankings mean? Why is it, and also why is it so important?
So search engine optimization, I think you're right in the sense that we oftentimes associate it with a lot of larger businesses and think, oh, that's a big business thing. But really, smaller businesses have a huge opportunity, because it's basically, search engine optimization is the process and the methods we use to get you more online visibility when it comes to, we'll just say Google for all intents and purposes, which is the largest search engine. It's how to get your business to show up there, and how to get it to show up higher. Because most people are looking at the first, maybe second page of rankings, but they're really not going beyond that. So the goal is to get you more online visibility, more people coming to your site, which then translates into more traffic to your business or service. And it's really so important, because I think social media gets a lot of buzz, and people are constantly out there trying to be on, Clubhouse, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. But really, those platforms aren't things that belong to you, whereas your website is something that's there, that's always going to be there, and can really reliably bring you traffic. Because you could have a huge, Facebook group, for example, and you get a lot of business there. But if Facebook decides at some point in time that you violated their terms of service, they can shut that down, and there goes your biggest funnel of business. So your website is something that you can use to consistently bring in traffic. And it isn't an overnight thing. You had mentioned, some of these companies coming in and saying, we can get you to the first page. If anybody guarantees you that in a really short amount of time, I would be really nervous about going further, because it's a long game. Search engine optimization, while you can make leaps, is something that it's a journey, but it's one that pays such dividends that you really can't ignore it.
So, but do you find that a lot of people that you've worked with, they don't always balance out? So in other words, like you were talking a few minutes ago about the fact that, you have all these people who are influencers, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're on all these other platforms. But then when they have their website doesn't necessarily compare to what they're doing on those other platforms. So how do you work with those type of clients, and what is the steps that they need to take in order to make the change?
Well, the goal should always be, and I say this from being a former social influencer and blogger, the goal is always to send people back to your website. It's great. Social media is great for, getting that know and trust factor, or getting engagement, but really you want to bring people to where all of your stuff is, which is on your website. So the more that you can use the social media and view it as a tool to send people back to your website, the better off you're going to be. And it really plays into, I like to call holistic SEO is sort of what I call it, is it isn't just one part. There's really three pillars that I look at when I work with my clients, which are optimizing your website, looking at your social media presence and content you're putting out there, but then also your local ranking factors, which are things like your Google My Business listing and other things that are more local focused. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like a broad way of looking at SEO as this really robust thing that isn't just keywords. Like a lot of people think SEO and they think, oh, keywords.
Right.
That's part of it, but it's a small part of it. SEO is really a big thing that you kind of have to look at the big picture and how it's going to drive traffic to your site.
Right. And when you say keyword, that is important because I've heard that over and over and over. Oh, it's the keywords. That's how they're going to find you. I'm like, okay, there's got to be more to this than just a keyword, because if that's the case, everybody would be doing it. And so I like that you explained and spelled out that it's really a holistic, overview of everything that you have in order to make yourself stand out. So in reality, it's to me, and the way I'm listening to you explain it, it's just like being an author. It's one thing to write the book, but it's how do you get yourself out there and understand that people are paying attention to you. Some people, they focus on just the name of the book itself. Other people will just look at the cover of it. Some people will actually definitely review the inside of it and like the book, but it's all these pieces that come together that make you stand out versus just saying, hey, I'm an author, because there's a million authors out there, right? So the way that you're explaining it to me is the better understanding of what SEO means for people, and especially as your small business. So when you talk about small business, what is the numbering system in your mind when you think about, hey, I love working with small business? Is it anywhere from 0 to 50, 50 on up, or what is your process on that?
I almost think of them probably more like a 0 to 50, definitely under 100. A lot of the clients I work with are the restaurants that you have downtown, not chain restaurants, but an independent restaurant, your local retail store, the service provider, a massage therapist. These people that sort of they have employees, but they wouldn't have over 100 employees for sure, and they're probably quite a bit smaller than that. So they really have, when we touched on local SEO, let me explain the difference between SEO and local SEO. So SEO is kind of generally those terms we're talking about where anybody online goes in and puts something into Google. Maybe I want to look at blogging tips. That's what I would put in. But if I'm talking about local SEO, that would be me searching for something near me. So maybe I look up massage therapist near me. So that's where the local SEO part comes in, because the search engines are figuring out where I am, that I want to see things served up to me on a map or in search results that are close to where I'm searching. And that's where these smaller local businesses have such a huge opportunity, because you're finding people right when they're looking for something that they're looking for. So they're looking for a massage therapist. So if you do it right, you're like, hey, here I am. I'm 5 miles away or 1 mile away. You show up there under the map in the first 3 listings or in the right-hand sidebar because you have a Google My Business listing. So you're kind of finding those people and really resonating with the people who are in your predefined local area, which is something that obviously these larger businesses can't compete with because you're right there.
Right. It's kind of like your GPS when I'm looking for something like, I only want to go 5 miles. So give me everything in a 5-mile radius. So I definitely like that concept. And I love that you focus on those local businesses. So tell me how everything affected you and your clientele during the pandemic when we were stuck at home. We couldn't really do a whole lot, but everybody was going virtually. And of course, those businesses, for instance, there were restaurants, they had to pivot. Everybody had to make some changes. How did that work for you and your customer?
Well, I think what it showed was the people who had already had a solid website and digital presence were ahead of the game. They could hit the ground running as soon as people had to do everything contactless and ordering online. And it was more of a struggle for people who didn't have a framework. I mean, believe it or not, I will still encounter restaurants that don't have a responsive website. Like if I have to scroll in there and expand and magnify too much, I'm not sticking around. I mean, I might have heard great things, but I need to order something and I need to be able to do that easily. So that's just a whole nother aspect of that SEO is we want to be helping our customers and providing them with the information they need to make choices. And we need to make it easy for them. So the local businesses that did that and made it super easy for people to go online, order things online, pick up in a contactless fashion, really made a lot of headway initially, and I think that sustained them moving forward.
Right. And that's important. And just like you were saying, that it would amaze me. There's still a lot of businesses out there that don't do websites because they've depended so much on the word of mouth or just their product or service that they had. So they don't always feel like they needed that. And then when everything kind of crashed down, and like I said, when you're looking for something, you're ordering, and obviously a lot of us during the pandemic, when we couldn't go anywhere, we ordered like crazy. So to be able to find that local business, because you're not always worried about trying to get to the larger entities, it was kind of sad to say that, we couldn't really help them and couldn't really support them because there was not enough information available. And I think that might have been some of the reason why some of these businesses literally had to shut down because they didn't have the capabilities. They weren't really prepared as they thought they were, because you can't always just live by word of mouth in order to survive in business.
Yeah, and people are out there looking. It doesn't matter. I always say, people will ask me sometimes, my business is referral based. Do I really need a website? Well, even if it is referral based, we all are going to creep out somebody's social media and look up their website before we go in. I mean, if you're like me, I'm going to Google this business. I'm going to kind of check and see if they're credible. And if they don't have a website and any other, presence digitally, it kind of does make me question a little bit the legitimacy of the business. So I think if anything, you need at least a presence there to show people that you're there and you recognize that they're going to be looking online, because we all are looking for things online. And even though we may get recommendations, we're still searching for your hours, like how to get to your place, all these things that we need, that if you make it easier for us to get that, we're like that much more likely to come into your place and purchase your product, service, or, your restaurant.
Right, exactly. And today, websites don't have to be like they used to. They don't have to be 5 pages, 6 pages. There's literally the new thing that's in now where you do 1 page and, it has all your services, your products, whatever it is that you're doing. It's all on 1 page. So things are much more flexible now when it comes to reviewing that website, but it gives you everything that you need to have, so that you can, like I said, make a sound decision versus just like, I don't know what this is or why this person's having. If they do have it, there's nothing on here that's worthwhile looking at, So I definitely agree with you that, when I was searching for something, I want to know, are you real? And even though sometimes we all know that when we're reviewing things, somebody can put together the most beautiful story, but then when you get to the product or the service or whatever it is that you're purchasing, that the truth comes out in the pudding, so to speak. So.
Yeah, you gotta be able to back it up. So
exactly.
Make your online presence look really nice, but also exceed expectations when you deliver whatever it is you're delivering.
Exactly.
For sure.
So, yeah, because we all know that happens. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got the most beautiful website, but I'm not sure about everything else that's going on over here. But it's
and I actually had the reverse situation where it was funny. There was a restaurant near where I live that it's just, everybody loves it. It's super, super popular. And I happened to go and I wanted to look at their menu. And I went, and it was so outdated. It was like, it might as well have been like HTML designed. It was absolutely awful. And I was like, oh, because it's sort of like, as much as I know and I trust that it's good, because I've eaten there before and I know they put out a good product, it just sort of didn't continue. It just didn't mesh in my mind. I thought, you know what, you should have something better than that, because your brand is better than that. And it's the whole picture. So you may not think it's important on your end, but people have first impressions. And if I'm visiting here and that's the first thing I see, I'm going to be like, oh, maybe they don't really care about that. Or maybe they're going to do other things. They're going to kind of have shortcuts, or it might be outdated other ways, which it's not. So there's sort of that, lack of congruency there between the two. So I think it's always important to have a cohesive feel to your brand and really carry that throughout everything. So it's important to have, a good online presence, but like we said, also continue that through your customer's journey in every interaction they have with you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Yeah, it's definitely important because, like I said, that first impression is much important. I mean, for everybody, and you can only have your representative out there for so long. You have to be real. So, it all comes out, the shake out of that, the package, so to speak. So, it's definitely important. So I got a few more questions for you. Talk to me about business as a whole. What would you give advice on when it comes into it doesn't have to be necessarily the business that you're in, but as a whole, what advice would you give somebody who is very interested in learning how to start their own business?
Oh, I think that the more you can niche down earlier, I always feel like it does take a while and you have to be in business for a while to figure this out. But the earlier you can kind of figure out and specialize in a certain area or target customer, makes everything in your business that much easier. Mm-hmm. I think entrepreneurs, we kind of find that over time, but I think some of us wish we had maybe discovered it a little bit earlier because it just streamlines everything in terms of your marketing, your messaging, pretty much everything down the line of what you do in your business. I think it makes it easier to run your business when you have kind of a narrower focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it does. And then I think, a lot of times, like I said, when you've been in business for a while, we all have gone through that process of trying to refigure out what we're doing, and revamping and pivoting from here to there. And a lot of it is because we have one thing in our mind, but then we start to realize that no, this is really what your focus is, and this is really where you need to be. I definitely have found myself doing that several times in the 5 years that I've had this particular business, because I've had more than one, but it's like, oh, wow, it's finally starting to come to fruition. I was thinking I was going to do this, but guess what? I guess that's not where I'm going to be today. So it's just, it's definitely... Go ahead.
Can I give a second one too? It makes me think also of outsourcing, not being afraid to outsource the things that aren't in your zone of genius. And I do think that a lot of business owners wait probably a little bit too long to do that when they start. You have to have money, and you have to have money to outsource some of these things. But as soon as you can, I think like for me, the first thing I did was bookkeeping. I wanted to get rid of because I just, it's not my area. Like, sure, I could try to figure out QuickBooks and try to reconcile everything, but I had zero interest in doing it and knew I wasn't going to do it as well. So the ability to give that to somebody else to free up my time to work on other things in my business was super valuable. So not being afraid to kind of take the leap and take some things off your plate that somebody else could do faster and better than you probably, and would enjoy it.
Right. Exactly. Well, when it comes to bookkeeping and taxes and all that, one thing I'm not trying to do is go to jail for anybody. Yeah. So it's like, if it's something you don't, it's like, if you don't know it, give it up, people. Stop trying to, cut corners, like they say, stay in your lane, and do what you're supposed to do. And then it does give you an opportunity, like I said, it frees you up to deal with the things that you're a true expert at. And, so that's important to learn how to outsource, because I think, like I said, as we all first come in business, it's all about, I got to save money and time, and, or I got to do this and that. But then you realize you actually have built up and piled up upon yourself because you're so worried about trying to let go of things, because this is your baby, you've birthed it, this is yours. And then trust comes as a factor when we're all, handling business, as a whole. But definitely agree with that when it comes to business. So also, why don't you tell us if you have anything, going on, do you want to share with the listeners that they may be interested in, reaching out to you about?
Well, I actually, and this is a recent kind of pivot that I did in my business, was to do VIP days, because I found that it was something that was really valuable for the small businesses, because a lot of businesses, going back to the fact that they probably don't need an agency on retainer monthly. They might, but probably that's a much larger business. What we do is kind of get one day dedicated to your business, to looking at where you are, figuring out a strategy for getting you where you need to go, and starting to implement that strategy. So I call them SEO virtual VIP days. And it's just a great way to really focus on your business, because like we said earlier in the conversation, that everybody's business is different. Everybody has different needs, and their location is different. So it allows us to really tailor whatever advice we're giving and things that we're implementing and strategies to that particular business. So it's been so much fun, because I think it's great. We get a lot accomplished, and people that like to implement, I love to just get stuff done. If I decide I want to do something, I'm all in, get her done. And it's a great way to really check that off your list. And the sooner you get your SEO in line, the better off it's going to be, because like we were saying, it's a journey. So you want to get all your ducks in a row on your SEO, so that it can continue to build over time and keep bringing you more and more traffic.
Well, I like that. VIP SEO days. That's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah.
Everybody wants to be a VIP, right?
Exactly. It makes you feel special. And then it doesn't, like you said, it's not a one-all things where, people can just check mark and say, well, here, I've built my SEO and that's it. Because like I said, every business is very different and unique. So you want to make sure that you're you're hitting all the the dots on the I, across the T's, and all that other good stuff, because I think it's important what you're saying, and it definitely gives me some more insight about what really SEO is about. When you break it down the way that you do, it makes it sound not as scary to some extent, because like I said, there's so many organizations and companies out here that they'll send you emails saying, hey, I'm an SEO expert. Okay, well, that's great and dandy, but I don't even know you, so it's like,
and I've seen that in small business. It's like predatory, I call it. And I've just seen so many local smaller businesses really spend money that they didn't need to spend because we could have looked at it and said, listen, this is going to give you a much bigger ROI by doing these two things than what these other people are going to do. And so, when you have to make your budget, it's like you want to make that money work the best way that it can for you. And I think it isn't fair to apply a cookie cutter, sort of setup that you use for every single business, because small businesses just have different needs. And, some of the things apply, but sometimes they need to be tweaked. And it's just sort of on a case-by-case basis. I think, it allows me to really take care of someone's business and treat it as if I would treat my own business.
Right. And you just said something really profound there and important, of having a budget. A lot of times, people, when they first start on the business, they start out with a little budget, and then all of a sudden they think as they get better at it, they don't always maintain that budget. And that's extremely important. Like you said, an SEO should be one of the first things that comes in as a part of your business. So, talking about having a budget is extremely important, and to have that and to move forward in that, so that that, the SEO is kind of like your social media, like it's something that you should always have available and should be doing daily. So you need to understand the importance of having that budget as a part of your business too.
For sure.
All right. Okay, so we are getting close to the end of the show. Time just flies when you're having a great time, having a good conversation. But before we end, of course, I want to know how the listeners can get a hold of you. And so if you'd like to share your social media links and website, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, you can find me at seasidedigitaldesign.com. So that's my website, and you'll find everything you need to know there. I have the same handle on Instagram. It's Seaside Digital Design, and the same for Facebook, and the same for LinkedIn. I actually spend a lot of time. I've gotten to love LinkedIn because I think it's a great way to really get kind of industry-specific news and really connect with business owners there. So I'm on there a lot, but I do also love Instagram. So you can find me there as well. And I love to share. I've gotten into Reels. I finally took the jump and went into sharing some stuff on Reels. So it's been fun to kind of give people little tidbits and little pieces of information to help them along.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's something that, coming out of my comfort zone as well. It's like, ooh, videos. It's like,
I will say that I can share with you. And then you can share it with your audience. I do have a quick little booklet that people can download too. That's great. It gives you 3 tips that you can do within an hour to help get more online visibility. It's super easy things that you don't need a web developer to do. They're things you can do on your own as a small business owner that I promise won't take you a whole bunch of time. So I'll be happy to pass that along for you to share as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's great. So again, like I said, we are coming towards the end of the show, and I am so ecstatic. And I thank you for spending your evening with me and talking about this very important topic, search engine optimization, because it is something that a lot of times we hear and we think about, but at the end of the day, we don't always have the answers. And you definitely provided us with some wonderful information, and as instead of calling them golden nuggets, we have the pink nuggets here on this show. So thank you for dropping all that great information to us. But do you have any last words for our listeners?
Just go make this step, take a first step to look at your SEO. And, if you do one thing after listening to this, get Google Analytics installed on your website. That's the one thing I want you to do, because even if you don't touch your SEO right now and you're not ready, you'll have data to start benchmarking your progress. So there's a bunch of information. There's some on my website. It's super easy. If you don't want to do it, you can have your web person do it, but get the tracking code in there, because if you're a numbers nerd like me, and even if you're not, it can really allow you to see the return on your investment, because the best thing about doing things online is we can look at all the data. It's, we can actually look at the numbers and see what's working and how people are finding you and where they're going on your website. And there's all sorts of valuable information, and it's a free service that you can use through Google. So go get Google Analytics if you don't already have it on your website.
All right. Well, you guys have heard it from the best. I definitely, like I said, have enjoyed this evening talking with you. There's a lot of great information you just poured out, Jessica, that's important for all businesses, but especially for our small businesses. So, it always leads me to ask everybody, my listeners, what is it that you wish that existed for you, and what are you not doing or you want to do? So this is your opportunity to reach out to professionals like Jessica Morrison, like I said, who is the owner of Seaside Digital Design and Marketing LLC. And of course, if you just want to talk to me so we can get you up and ready and started and want to learn more about how we can turn your dreams into your goals, you can reach out to me at Kimberly, WSBILLC@gmail.com, and let's just have a chat. And of course, if you want more of your resource for success, hey, donate and support our podcast. We have a Cash app that we will be providing in the DM, so you can find that information, or you can go directly to the website at www.wsbilc.com, and you can donate directly from there. But again, we would like to thank you all for listening to us tonight. We'll be back next week with more amazing guests, and be sure to follow us on our radio or download our mobile app on Google Play or wherever you listen to your podcast. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening, and good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.